So I spent yesterday looking through our data, and over the last 15 months, it is shown from the data we've collected that effectively when people come to see us, we achieve on average an 89% pain reduction. We meet patients' goals 98% of the time. It normally takes us 12 weeks to get people better. And 6 months after people leaving us, 75% of them are doing double the activity they were before they got injured. So what I want to try now is try and just have a quick chat about, not about what I do in active, but about things that people can do to keep active, because that's a big passion of mine. And what I want to try and do now is something different to last time. I've almost prepared a little PowerPoint. So I want to share my screen because there's some visual images, and I'm severely dyslexic, so I work better with pictures than words anyway. So this may not actually work. Let's have a look. So you should be able to see a PowerPoint presentation, a screen now in front of you. Yep, perfect, good. So I just want to have a chat about trying to reduce your risk of getting an injury. Now, I'm from a science background, so I will never say prevent, because we can never prevent anything from a science viewpoint. We always reduce risk. That's just my little clinic and our own little gym on site. So why we get injured? There are two schools of thought on why we get injured. One is trauma. So that means falling over, breaking a leg, for example. The most common is the image on the left, which is something what we call overloading. So that means you've constantly done something for a long period of time, which has then resulted in a tissue being overloaded and the structure being overloaded. And the reason why Jan picks up on it was you're seeing people working from home getting these different sort of injuries is because their body's not used to doing that thing. They've gone from working in an office to now sat at home in a different position, and they're just not used to it. So it needs to be a gradual progression, but at the moment we haven't got that facility to do that. So a nice diagram I tend to use in clinic with patients is to explain why we get injured is this something called the zone of optimum stress, developed by a colleague of mine, Dr. Simon Spooner. And because I'm a podiatrist by background, so me personally, I just deal with the lower limb. I have other staff that deal with upper limb stuff. So I will talk about the Achilles tendon. So obviously the thing around the back of your leg that goes from your calf muscle when it attaches to the back of your heel. And if we say this white line is the Achilles tendon, and the two blue vertical lines here and here, this window is what we call your zone of optimum stress. So in simple terms, as long as you operate within that window, you won't pick up an injury. And this red line here is how much load you're putting through this. So in this current state here, this person won't pick up an injury because they're operating in a window that their body is happy with. What happens, and what I think is a risk of happening post obviously lockdown period, is that some people, once they get let loose, as it were, they think, right, I could only be able to get doing one thing a week, one thing a day. I'm let loose, so now I'm going to think, oh, actually, I was due to run a marathon, so I'm just going to run the marathon anyway because I was due to do it. And they then increase their mileage quickly, or work or activity quickly, and then they pop themselves outside of this zone here. Then that's when the injury happens. What then happens is that zone of optimum stress will then reduce. So your body's ability to facilitate load and stress and whatnot physically reduces. So this is why, if you've ever had an injury in the past, when you say, okay, I picked up a niggle, I can't think I didn't trip, I didn't fall, so this is an overloading problem. And now I've got to the point where I used to be able to run, but now it hurts when I walk and I can't even run. And that's why, because every time you aggravate it, this zone just gets smaller and smaller. So the aim of what you need to try and do is give yourself that biggest window as possible and to reduce the load. So then effectively, you've then got this window here to work with before you pick up an injury. And the big thing how you do this bit here is that's where coming into the likes of doing your strengthening exercises and doing your activity to give yourself that bigger zone of optimal stress, and you reduce the load from my perspective from changing people walk, run, insoles, footwear. It can be seating position at work, taping. So you're giving yourself the best chance you can of not picking that injury up again. And I'm about to ruin this logo for everyone. And people often sort of fail through this process because we fail to see progression. If we have an injury, as human beings, we get fixated on that injury. And as things get better, our goals constantly change. So if people come to see me and they say, look, my goal is to get back to walking every Sunday with the family. As they get better, they then change their goals. They say, well, actually, I want to walk with my family every Saturday and Sunday. But because it takes them longer to achieve that, they fail to see what their original goal was. And the reason I use this logo, because if anyone doesn't notice, is that the FedEx logo actually has an arrow pointing forward built into the logo. And every time you see this FedEx logo now, you're not going to see the FedEx, you're going to see the arrow. So I've just ruined it for everyone that hasn't seen it before. And I think this is a brilliant logo. Whoever designed it, yeah, it's fair play, because I think that was intentional. But so how do we prevent overloading? There's something in the medical world called the 10% rule. So people say increase what you do by 10% and you won't pick up an injury. I have a few issues with that, because if you're not doing much, it can take you ages to achieve something. If you're doing a lot, you can then overload. So what we tend to work on is something called the acute chronic workload ratio. Has that gone to my website, or are you still seeing the PowerPoint?
Still seeing the PowerPoint.
Okay, I'll put the link in afterwards anyway. So the acute chronic workload ratio allows people to look at 4 weeks worth of activity, and you basically type the numbers in and it tells you if you're doing too much or not. So it gives you a much broader overview of that 10% rule, where you can look at a much larger selection of data and work out if there's an increased risk of getting an injury. So when people come out of this lockdown period, you can plan what activity you're going to do, stick it into the acute chronic workload ratio, and if that number is greater than 1.2, you've got an increased risk of picking up an injury. So then go back to the drawing board, adapt what you were going to do to try and get that number under 1.2, and you'll significantly reduce your risk of getting an injury. And that's something better, in my opinion, than the 10% rule. And on my website, I'll put the calculator in there, so all you've literally got to do is type in the numbers and it does all the maths for you. And I'll put the link in the chat afterwards. And for me, I'm very focused on getting people fitter and stronger. So for me, if I was to pick 3 core exercises that I think people should be doing on a regular basis, these would be it from a low limb perspective. So we're doing a calf raise to work on getting your calf stronger. Doing a single leg squat to help with quad strength, but also helps with what we call balance and proprioception. And then doing what we call a lateral band crab walk. And these are all just stills from our YouTube channel, so I can put the links to these videos in the chat. And for me, if people just get into a routine of doing these 3 exercises on a regular basis, I do think we'll start to see less injuries, because people get stronger, so then their bodies are used to doing the exercises. There is no magic one exercise. There is no thing I say, you do this exercise and you'll reduce your injury. That doesn't exist. It's about horses for courses. And the big thing I will say is, a lot of people say, okay, I'm doing exercise, I'm going to do this exercise 10 times. I'm not a fan of that. I tend to work on what we call rate of perceived excursion. So that means getting to a point where rate of perceived RPE is how hard you are working. So during the exercise, everyone should be working sort of a 7 out of 10. So that means it shouldn't be like I can't do anymore, but it shouldn't be really easy. So if that means you do 10 repetitions, or that means you do 20 repetitions, if everyone's working so 7 out of 10, everyone's doing the same level of exercise for them, because we are a bunch of individuals. Everyone is unique. So that's why I'm not a fan of sort of pigeonholing everyone into doing the same thing, because it will work for a small group of people, but with the majority, it won't. So then to sum up, really, small gradual changes. If you're going to do anything, just make it small, and using the acute chronic workload ratio, getting yourself stronger and doing things on a regular basis. Now, all those exercises there can be done while you're making a cup of tea. You can do those in the time it takes the kettle to boil. And my mantra is, if you can give people exercises to do and it doesn't take any time out of their daily routine, you're more likely to do it. The ones that people don't do exercise is when they go to see people and they say, here's a list of paper with 20 exercises, it's going to do and it'll take you an hour at the end of the day. Even in the current climate of working from home, people aren't going to do it. However, if I say here are 3 exercises and you do it whilst the kettle's boiling, whilst you're brushing your teeth, you're going to do it. You do it, you see the benefit. Because you see the benefit, human instincts say you want to do more of it. So then also sleep is a big thing as well. There's lots of research coming up now saying that reduced sleep increases your risk of getting an injury. So making sure we are trying to get a good solid sleep pattern on a regular basis. And there's so much technology like watches that can help monitor that now for you. And then think rate of perceived excursion, not reps. So that's sort of a quick summary of what I think is important when we're trying to reduce the risk of people getting injuries. And the big thing is to get across is that there is no right answer for everyone. We're all individuals, so it's making it unique for everyone. And so hopefully that gives people a bit of a flavour on what you can do to try and reduce your risk of getting injury after this.
Nick, a powerful presentation.
Yes.
Great images.
Amazing.
It proves that with Zoom, you've got a captive audience. You can show them great visuals.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I'm waiting for your blog or on Facebook or LinkedIn, where it's exercise you can do while the kettle's boiling. I think that's got a fun element to it.
Yeah.
And I will never look at the FedEx logo again without.
Sorry.
I only have to say, why didn't they tell people? Because it would have meant more that they'd done that. But it's almost the best kept secret. I love that. I can't tell you how many people I'm going to tell that this week already. A lot of people. So a very quick 30-second sum up, because we've great conversation. Thank you very much. If all of the groups that I speak to were like you, my job would be a lot easier. But great content. So my 8 takeouts. 8's a lucky number for some in the world. So my 8 takeouts are agile working. Dermot, I love the terminology. I'll be using that, and I'll give you credits. Rethinking of office space moving forward is definitely one. Build your international business. You're only as small as you tell people as a business. Only you know that there's you working, or you and 2 or 3 others, or Kerry and I. But through associates, through collaboration, you can be a huge company. No, you're only as big or as small as you tell people. Video does have humanity. You do see into people's homes, but we should be mindful that obviously it's less natural. We have to accept that. Where's my number 5? That challenge, please win the challenge of personal time, motivation, taking time out. I think that was really important from what you were saying. And we should be mindful of the mental health, that video, being on screen. I've had one client that said, I'm not going to switch on my screen because I don't like being on video. 4 Zooms later, she's now on video. But it just takes some people more time to engage with it. And take time to show your true colours. So work with charity, helping people, giving of your own time. We're more efficient now by working from home and in these environments. So use that extra time, not just to do the gardening, which obviously is important. And I've got my list of chores that I need to do, but give of your time and help others. And the final one is better communicating. This is a better format. In some ways, if we were all in a room now having breakfast, we would not have engaged with each other as much as we have now. I'm not taking away from that element, but there is power within video conferencing. Well done, everyone. Mike to round up.